So Lucian Bute and Jean Pascal. Here's the quote, by the way, that Jean Pascal, the 27-2-1, 16 knockout fighter, who has basically inherited Montreal. Here's what he said, and then we'll get to our reaction of his quote. This is the championship of Canada. This is the Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao of Canada. This is the Super Bowl of boxing in Canada. He should get into promoting. This is the biggest fight for boxing in Canada. We are two former world champions. We are well known in the States and in Canada. People have looked forward to this fight for a long time, so this is the biggest fight in boxing history in Canada. Very quickly. Oh, man. Wait, can I take a Kodak? Give your reaction. Go ahead. You look disgusted.
I wouldn't quite say it's the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather of Canada. I mean, I don't know. I'm not Canadian, so I really can't say what kind of weight this holds for Canadian boxing enthusiasts.
Sure.
But for me, it's going to be a very exciting fight. I'm looking forward to it, but I wouldn't say it's anywhere near a mega fight at all.
What would you call this then? It is a big fight. At least for the boxing purists, it seems like a big fight that should have happened years upon years ago, a la Mayweather-Pacquiao.
Definitely, and it's scheduled originally for last, what was it, March?
It was, I believe, March. Then they suspended it for 8 months. They postponed it, excuse me. That would be the correct word, because of a Bute hand injury.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess that, you know, it's a well-anticipated fight, but, you know, I would just be very careful about putting things on the magnitude of a super fight. You know, the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather fight, that is the fight, you know. So
what constitutes a super fight? Because, I mean, technically, when we went into the Bradley-Provatnikov fight, we thought, yeah, it's going to be a good fight. It turned out to be one of the best fights of the year. Yeah. So does a mega fight and a huge fight always have to constitute being a pay-per-view fight?
Absolutely not.
Glad we're in agreement.
You will definitely get some sleepers that, you know, you just happen to be watching Boxing After Dark one night and you're just like, whoa. And you got to call up everybody you know and start tweeting about it because it's an amazing sight to see. But when I think of a mega fight, obviously, in today's era, you can't help but think about anything that a Floyd Mayweather or a Manny Pacquiao are involved in, because there's so much media around it. There's so much anticipation. Will it go this way? Will it go that way? You know that the purses are being split and, you know, they're getting just ridiculous amounts of money. When I think of a super fight, I think of Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier or, you know, something like that. Just something that there's, you know, so much anticipation that the first several rows, you see a celebrity.
Well, here's the only thing, and maybe I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a second. We're not in Canada. Definitely. So we don't exactly know what the reaction, we could read about it online, we could see what the media is saying about it. We're huge boxing fans, everyone knows that, but we're not in Canada, so maybe we don't know the great buzz that is going on throughout Montreal. And of course, this is taking place on Saturday at the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec. By the way, Bute, 31-1, 24 knockouts. He is the taller man in this fight, 6'1", to I believe Pascal's 5'10"-ish, we'll say.
It's probably 5'8".
He could be. There's something about Bute that we were talking about before we went on the air. You noticed in his last fight that he didn't have the want. He didn't have the hunger to sort of finish off his opponent, and it was a very competitive fight against Denis Grachev. But, I mean, what did you see exactly that gave you that impression?
He seemed a bit uninterested in times. It seemed like, you know, he started off fresh, wanted to see, almost as if he wanted to see what he had left after the fight with Froch.
So he was questioning himself.
Man, you know, like I said,
was he Zab Judah gun shy? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, I haven't seen a Zab Judah gun shy fighter since, you know,
since his last fight.
Since his last fight.
What point were you gonna make?
I was actually gonna say that Roy Jones is looking pretty gun shy in his fights, but he's much older than Zab, but still.
But Bute was not gun shy.
No, I didn't get the sense that he was gun shy, but anytime you suffer a knockout like that, like I said before, boxing is so mental. You do question whether or not you still have it. You question, why did this happen to me? Are my skills diminishing? You know, so when I saw him in the ring, I saw him just uninterested at times. It felt like
uninterested.
It seemed like to me he was going in there trying to execute certain things, and if a certain combination wouldn't work or a certain game plan wouldn't work, he would just become frustrated really easily, and he would just get uninterested. And just start bouncing around a lot and start moving and becoming more defensive. And
that's his style. He keeps his left hand up here, and he sort of protects his chin at times with his shoulder. But I mean, he has that sort of ring generalship, as Letterman likes to say, in a lot of those fights. So I mean, that sounds like a normal fight to me, where he's circling out and he's just moving around the ring.
Yeah, definitely. That is his style, but I've seen him be way more offensive than that. And for example, Manny Pacquiao gets knocked out against Marquez, against Brandon Rios when he could have finished him off, he backed off.
Yes, he did.
That is more so of the tendency that I saw in him in that fight. It wasn't his natural nature. Obviously, he's a more defensive fighter, but you've seen him be way more offensive and work some combinations that are like, man, that's up there.
But that was against the Jean-Paul Mendes of the world, pre-Carl Froch. Remember that as well.
That's my point.
Okay.
Before Carl Froch, he would have went in there in this last fight and he would have worked those combinations, I really feel like. And I think he would have stopped him had he not been thinking, I need to kind of reserve my chin, or preserve my chin rather, and, just kind of squeak away with this victory.
So all in all, basically what you're saying is he has lost so much confidence in himself to unload combinations because he doesn't want to suffer the repercussions from his opponent.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Glad we're on the same page then. His most notable wins, by the way, for Bute. You want to name some of them? You got them?
No.
Librado Andrade, Edison Miranda, Jesse Brinkley, Glenn Johnson. That's hilarious. I love Apple, but for some reason they autocorrect like crazy, so it didn't come out as Johnson for some reason. Sakio Bika, and then he beat Denis Grachev. For Pascal, 27-2-1, 16 knockouts. He suffered a loss against Carl Froch December of 2008. But here's the other interesting part. Since that Dawson win, he has gone on to a draw and a loss against Bernard Hopkins, the great Bernard Hopkins. Yeah. He beat Kuziemski, and then he knocked out George Blades in 5 rounds. Now, Froch suffered with George Blades. So out of anything, would you give Pascal the upper hand going into this fight? Not necessarily on the George Blades front, but on the overall career and where they are now.
He hasn't suffered a devastating knockout such as Bute, so I would have to think that he's going into this fight mentally a lot more confident and trusting in his skills.
Okay.
We know, they both have flaws. Pascal.
Before you go on, what are Pascal's skills? It seems like he's a very he's a come-forward fighter. He's a power puncher. Seems like that's about it.
Yeah. I wouldn't even give him the power punching edge because he only has 16 knockouts. For as many fights as he has, I would think that if we want to declare
I thought the number would be higher.
I thought the number would be higher as well for him. He just keeps a manic pace. He keeps a manic pace. He does want to be a pressure fighter. He wants to be that presence in the ring. But
he doesn't have good enough skills.
But he doesn't have good enough skills is what I'm saying. He has a lot of defensive flaws, but I think he's the speedier fighter. I think he's faster. I think he's a little bit more explosive. And I think that when it comes down to it, if both of these men, let's say they're in exchange and both of them get clipped,
Bute
they both
would
get
not
hurt,
want to get in an exchange, though, you know that.
Yeah, I do know that,
yeah.
and which is setting up my point, an excellent segue. I think that if they both get hurt, Pascal is going to be the one that continues to fight.
Absolutely.
And breaks Bute down. I think that if Bute gets hit and he gets hurt, he's going to start backpedaling, backing straight up, which is going to set him up for an even worse punch.
And he has shown repeatedly now, especially in the Froch fight, not repeatedly, but in the biggest fight of his career against a power puncher, if he gets hit, he will back up. He will surrender. He will throw the white flag, not necessarily from him, but his corner. He will get bruised and beaten. And he has shown in that fight, and maybe you could, this is my next point, that he cannot take a punch, that he has that sort of Amir Khan-like glass chin.
Yeah.
Would you say that Pascal's power is not necessarily up to Carl Froch's, because Froch has more knockouts.
Right.
But would you say that if Pascal hits him once on the chin, game over?
I think that he, especially if he catches him early, I think if he catches him within the first 4 to 5 rounds clean on the chin, I think it's a good fight, good night. Okay. I think that Bute is in a place right now where he doesn't really want to take too much more punishment, and you know, rightfully so. He does have a fairly decorated career, especially in Canada. I'm sure he has, you know, a well sum of money saved up. And from what I've just seen in that last fight, it doesn't really seem like he's really willing to go there anymore and take that kind of punishment. As where Pascal is already looking, you know, not necessarily past him, but he's looking for future fights and future big fights.
Firstly, who do you have winning? I mean, do you have Jean Pascal or do you have Lucian Bute taking over the Bell Center on Saturday night?
I think that the winner of the Canadian Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Canadian Pacquiao Mayweather. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go with Jean Pascal.
Knockout?
I think that he's gonna win by knockout. I think he wants it more. He's although the shorter man, I think he's the bigger man, more natural at that weight.
Okay.
And I think he's gonna carry his weight well. He's gonna carry the power on his punch as well. And I think he's coming with that mental mission to stop him and make him question if he ever wants to get in the ring again, as where I see question in Lucian Bute's demeanor.
I just had somewhat of an epiphany, and I want to change my stance. I don't know why, but I do. I want to say that it goes 12, but considering everything that we just talked about and how Bute will, surrender under pressure, I say he gets knocked out in 10. A decision would not surprise me because, as we stated, Pascal does get tired as the fight goes along, depending on how active he has to be in order to chase Bute around the ring. I'll say it goes 10. I'll say Pascal wins by knockout. And then that sets up my next point. Should Pascal fight, or will he ever get the chance to fight Adonis Stevenson to possibly regain his belts that he once had in a humongous fight in Canada? That could be Super Bowl #2 in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is a more interesting fight than the fight with Bute. Because if Bute fights Stevenson, Stevenson has that big left hand.
Bute should not want to get in there with Stevenson.
He's going to stiffen him up and just knock him straight out.